One of the things that's helped me the most is listening to as many voices as possible. Like there are a lot of guys like yourself out there putting excellent information. And like, I mean, these answers might upset a few viewers. Probably the biggest thing was...
So how can you actually finish more synthwave music? And not only that, but how do you actually go about promoting your synthwave music once you've finished and released it? In this video, I interview synthwave artist Neon Racer and get his best tips for not only creating and finishing more music, but also how he went about promoting his music. In fact, he shares how he is able to get over 14,000 streams on one of his recent releases in just 1 month. But real quick, before we dive into the interview, be sure to grab my free Synthwave starter pack in the description below. This comes with over 100 Synthwave samples, and it also comes with my Synthwave sound design cookbook, so you can create your own synthwave sounds inside of a wavetable synthesizer. And last but not least, it also comes with my synthwave mixing checklist. So again, this is all for free in the description below, or just go to orpheusaudioacademy.com/starter pack. All right, so today I am interviewing Neon Racer, or Ash Sinclair, as he is more commonly known probably in the world among human beings. But I am going back to the future here because he is from Australia and I'm here in the United States. So we wrangled the time difference, and he's in the future. It's Saturday morning for you, right? And it's Friday for me. So what's it like in the future?
It's not too bad. It's pretty hot. We've just had a week of 40 degrees here in Adelaide, which I think by your measure is over 100 degrees. So it's sweltering.
So who is Neon Racer?
Look, I think if I put it in 2 words, it would be identity crisis. Essentially, probably like everybody in our genre and subgenres, my head's kind of stuck in the 80s, I guess. I started playing in bands in the 80s, so I took up guitar and never really kind of grew out of it. I've just been waiting for all of this to come back around, I guess, and it has. Probably about 10 years ago, I found Synthwave, and I didn't jump on it straight away. I was still playing a lot of guitar, a lot of hair metal. Hard to tell now because the hair's not there anymore, but eventually it kind of wore me down. I did release a couple songs maybe 5 years ago. This is where the identity crisis comes in, I guess. I was quite influenced by Myron, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but he's a pretty talented guitar player who really kind of flirts with synthwave, retrowave, however you want to categorize it, as his backing music, I guess, but still very much Guitar Hero type stuff. And that's where I saw myself going. And my first couple of releases certainly reflected that, plus my lack of production experience. And then my band kind of got busy, so I just left it. And the band was a victim of COVID that finally got a hold of us last year. So it was a perfect opportunity to dip my toes back in. I kind of really found that I just wanted to put the guitar down and focus on the production side of things and work in a box a little bit more. And so there's a huge shift in those first couple of songs, which I've actually started taking down. I removed one this week, and the other one will probably fall to the axe later this week. I just don't think they really kind of reflect where I'm at. And I'm actually thinking about changing my name as well, because I felt like that whole, when I started 5 years ago, there weren't as many acts with neon in the name, and now I feel like it's every second act has that. I cringe when I post now a little bit. And also like the whole racer thing, I was a bit of a over-the-top shredder sometimes, and it kind of reflected that a little bit more. I'm sure you would agree that the stuff I've been putting out recently, there's nothing racy about it. So I do have a name that I'll be shifting over to, but I'm just trying to plan how I'm going to do that transition. So
interesting.
Next time we catch up, it might be a different artist name. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see how long it takes for me to actually bite the bullet.
All right,
make the change.
I'll change the title on the video then if you end up changing
I don't think it's going to happen in the short term, but certainly working on it.
That's really interesting. The hair metal background. That's actually I feel like that's fairly common in the synthwave genre.
There are
maybe
so
more
many
so
of
like
us.
like shred wave. A lot of people come from that background, and I really like that. Maybe it's because I don't play the guitar. I want to learn the guitar, but I really love synthwave music that has guitars in it. So I think that's
I think it has to be.
Maybe you should pick it back up. Maybe you should include.
I certainly still play guitar. I mean, You Kept Me Running has some guitar in it. It's like pretty restrained, but the song told me that it needed it. that part just came into my head. Whereas like Our Long Lost Summer, I could not hear guitar in that, so I left that alone. And the same with the track that I sent you the sneak preview of, which will be coming out in a couple of weeks. There's no guitar in that. I felt like if I put it in there, it would have been shoehorned. So I'm certainly not avoiding the guitar, but I don't want it to be the focus anymore. And to be honest, there are guys that just do it so much better than me as well, that I hear their stuff and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'll just put the guitar down for a bit. But yeah, like as you say, there are a lot of guys that come from that. So Russell Nash, he's doing some really great genre stuff out of Scotland. He's kind of one of my favorite artists at the moment. A great guy. We had a very lengthy discussion the other week about our favorite hair metal albums and so on. And yeah, he certainly gave me the impression there's a lot more of us with that background out there. It takes a lot to get a shredder to put the guitar down. So I think that's the strength of the genre, that it is getting us to put the ego aside and do things we're not quite as good at. I'm certainly no keyboard player, but I'm getting there slowly.
Interesting. So you sound like you're fairly well connected in the kind of the synthwave scene. Would you say that's the case, or like what's kind of like, how do you get in contact with people? You just reach out to people on social media, or how do you like form your connection?
Yeah, to be honest, like I don't know if I'd say I'm well connected, but I'd say I've got some good connections in terms of I've hit it off with some artists who I was a fan of beforehand, and I think most of it's just come through interaction, through sharing their music, commenting, and this might play into something we chat about later in terms of promotion, but
right.
It was just an organic thing. I love sharing music that I find that I like. I think just because I love music and I love to open that discussion with people, but I think it's also important as an artist that people see you supporting other artists as well. Right. I think there's probably a lesson in there for some artists that have moved on to certain levels of success that have ceased doing that, but maybe we can walk that controversial path later. But yeah, guys like Russell, Fons, Tramontano, Rocco Destro, they're just guys whose music I kind of really fell in love with and started sharing. They started interacting with me, and next thing you know, they were adding me to playlists and sharing my music and putting a lot of support in there. And I think if you just put yourself out there and, people see it as a genuine love of the music rather than a marketing ploy, like people can't help but connect with that.
Right.
And I think that's one of those hard steps, because like at the start, especially, like you're so keen to get music out there and promote it and post it everywhere.
Right.
You've got to have some kind of human side to you there as well, I think. And I guess being part of Australian, like we're pretty down to earth. We love to make mates with everybody we come across and give everybody that chance to form a connection. And yeah, I'm certainly no different to most of my countrymen that way. And the Scots are pretty much the same. Most of my connections are in Scotland. Somehow that's happened, but there's a huge scene over there. So yeah, definitely worth tapping into.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we got connected, right? I just commented on one of your songs on Instagram, right? So
yep, absolutely. Yep, and collab to come.
Yeah, we can't wait. That'll be exciting.
I'm very excited.
So you said you've been making synthwave for about 5 years?
Yeah, on and off. Certainly started about 5 years ago. I put 2 tracks out, and then I just got busy with my band, and also just work. Like my career got pretty busy in that period as well, but I was really focused on the band. Like we got in the studio, released a couple of singles, started playing a lot of gigs after a few years of hard work writing songs, waiting until we were ready. But then COVID hit, just like it did everywhere. Live music was probably one of those industries that really took a big hit. We managed to get back together and start playing again once the Adelaide restrictions and lockdowns stopped. We had, I'm sure you probably saw in the news, I've heard that we made the international news for strict lockdowns in Australia. We had some of the longest lockdowns in the world. So we managed to get back out there, but without saying too much, some of the band members hadn't stayed committed over that break, and we weren't quite firing on all cylinders when we came back. And I'm not young anymore. I've just turned 50 recently. I just didn't want to waste time. I felt like if I was going to make music, I just wanted to get it out there and
Yeah.
So getting back into synthwave, where I did have passion and I had it calling in the background that whole time. I just felt it was time to kind of dip my toe. So I spent a little bit more time studying the production side of things beforehand. I wanted to make sure when I put the next song out, there was going to be a big leap in quality. And I feel like that's the case. It's not to say that I haven't got a lot to learn. I feel like every track I'm putting out now, I'm getting better and better at that production side of it. And I'm certainly enjoying that production side even more than the songwriting side, to be honest, which is kind of why I reached out for collabs. Like I kind of really want to dabble in the box a little bit more and maybe a bit less in finding the chord progressions to kick it off. But
yeah, that's really, yeah, definitely you can go through stages like that. And there's definitely never time to waste.
Yeah.
You think you always have more time than you do. So over that experience, what would you say you've kind of learned, or is maybe like, I don't know if you can narrow it down to like one tip, or what are maybe like 1 to 3 kind of major takeaways you've learned when it comes to producing synthwave music? Or like your biggest tips, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest tips, and one of the things that's helped me the most, is listening to as many voices as possible. Like there are a lot of guys like yourself out there putting excellent information in terms of the production side of things, and not to blow smoke up your butt, but like, yeah, I've gotten a lot out of your channel before we ever connected. And there are other channels who I won't give the airtime to now, but yeah, there are other people out there putting out good information. But I think also stepping outside of the genre has helped me. So just watching things like general pop production has been really important to me. But I think, you know, not to hamper on cliches, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of cliches today because it comes part of the course of synthwave. But I think keeping things as simple as you can and do the things that you know how to do, and you know, try not to get too caught up in spending time on things that maybe you haven't researched enough yet. There's nothing wrong with just throwing music out there to the wolves. You know, throw some songs out there to die, because you're going to get a lot more out of that feedback, as hard as those lessons can be to learn. I think sometimes someone come back going, look, your mix is a little bit thin, or yeah, your vocals a bit disjointed from the mix, like any of those types of tips. Like it's going to be hard to get those tips if you don't put yourself out there. I think you really just got to have at it, you know, have a go. Music is music. At the end of the day, it's all subjective. It doesn't matter what someone says to you about your music. It is still subjective, no matter how experienced that person is. There's still a lot of opinion there. So don't take it to heart. Just learn what you can and just get the next song out there. Just, you know, add each lesson to the next project.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Something my mentor said, and he's 40+ year industry expert, owns his own professional recording studio. He's worked with like AC/DC, and he says like, yeah, there's no really right way to mix. There's no right or wrong way. It's just what sound are you trying to go for and how close did you get to it. So and that's what that idea of kind of like perfectionism has like held me back for so long, is like I don't want to put anything out there because it doesn't sound like this other band that I really like. But that's how you grow, is just getting your music out there and getting that feedback like you mentioned. And I just real quick, I completely just simplicity I keep going back to, is like just embrace simplicity, because the whole process of making music, like people are always looking for, like, I feel like the silver bullet. People are asking like, what's the key? Kind of like what I asked you, that leading question. It's not really a good question, because how well your song turns out is a huge long chain, right? It's first off, it's the songwriting, the instrumentation, the arrangement, then it's the recording. How good was the recording, if it's vocals or other instruments like guitars, and then it's like editing, right? How well you've edited your vocals and tuned things and aligned things, and then it's mixing, and then it's mastering. It's like, if any point along that chain is weak, then the whole song's going to be weak. And so if you're overcomplicating things, you're just adding more links to that chain. There's more things that can go wrong, and it's better to just start out simple, and then you can build from there. And like, there's tons of videos out there, like from like huge artists like the Chainsmokers. They did a tutorial on their song Roses, and it's like super simple how they made it. There's a French artist named Stromae. He did like a song called Allah's and Dance, I think. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, But like he has a video on YouTube how he made that song in like 5 minutes. And so not that you want to maybe make music that simple, but there's something to be said, I think, for really simplifying like that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I often talking to people about music production point out the most streamed song in history, Blinding Lights, right, by The Weeknd, like 3.5 billion streams or whatever it's up to now. Like it's amazing production, but when you really listen to it, there's not that many moving parts. It's just every part is done so well. Every part is in the right place. You know, the arrangement is probably the most important part of that song, and look at how successful it is. I mean,
right.
You know,
and it's synthwave. How about that?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You know, the most streamed song in the world is Synthwave. Although I'm sure The Weeknd would never call it that, nor would most of his fans even be familiar with that term. But
yeah, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves there. We're going to talk about the future of Synthwave later. Yeah, because I thought that was, I read one article that kind of was passed around in Synthwave circles saying Synthwave was dead back in 2019.
Yeah.
I think it's because I think if I remember right, their explanation was because it's kind of infiltrated everything. It's kind of become part of everything. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves there. So one of the biggest questions I receive from people is like, how do you actually go about finishing a song, right? You might have like that 8-bar loop. You have your idea, right? Maybe you've got some chords, maybe you've got a melody, maybe a beat, but then how do you expand that out into a full song?
Yeah, I love this meme. I've been seeing this shared everywhere, this stuck in an 8-bar loop meme, and I've been sent it a lot from musician friends. Probably smiling, like, because cheekily, this is not something I have an issue with, but I think there's very solid reasons for that. I think coming from another instrument and coming from a songwriting background, because I've always played in original bands, I've never played in cover bands ever. And I'm not saying that to be, you know, derogative towards cover bands. I think they're great as well, and there's a lot of skills you can get from that. But I've always been in the songwriting mindset, so I have not the world's best music theory, but I have a little bit of it. So if I had have just jumped straight into synthwave from no music background or from another EDM genre, I think I would probably be suffering from that 8-bar loop death, just like a lot of other people. But I do have an approach that would probably help people to a certain extent as well. I typically, like, when I come up with an idea, I'm usually starting with a chord progression. So I know there's a lot of discussion about top-down songwriting or bottom-up songwriting or what have you, but I almost always start with a chord progression that I like, or I just dabble until I find something that I like. I'll quickly throw a beat on it, and then I'll immediately start to work on a melody. But once I've got a melody that I like, I don't sit in that 8-bar loop trying to perfect it and trying to build it. I try to instantly find the next change, whether that's going to be a key change or a tempo change. I'll instantly try to find something else to go to. So even if it doesn't end up being the final part, there's something there that is changing gears in my mind and making me think about that original 8-bar loop a little bit differently. And I usually won't shut the project until I've got 3 different distinct parts. So then when I come back and listen with fresh ears again, I may not keep those parts, but at least I'm thinking about it in song terms and not that I've got this amazing melody or this amazing chord change and I need to make that everything. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm probably not explaining it all that well, but it's really that I try to think outside 8 bars right from the very start.
Okay.
And such, I usually don't have an issue with arrangement or what have you.
Okay. Do you ever like structure your song out first? Like, here's where my verse is going to be and my chorus, or do you kind of just blink?
I usually have an idea on what I think each part should be. It doesn't mean it always finishes that way. And, you know, the second I start to collaborate with someone else, of course, they're going to have different ears as well. And so quite often it'll be like, no, I think this is going to be the chorus. So like, I always leave that door open to change my mind, but I do try to go intro, verse, chorus, bridge, whatever the parts are that I have. I try and find where I think they should be, but I do end up chopping and changing a bit. And that might be my version of that. At getting stuck in an 8-bar loop, I will spend weeks changing my mind over where the chorus should be, or what is the chorus? Is this the pre-chorus or what have you? So I do get stuck there a little bit. But we've all got our thing.
I've thought about like doing a tutorial on my channel where it's like so far on my longer tutorials, I'm just like showing my finished project, and I've thought about just like recording myself actually creating a song, but I change what I'm doing so much. Like I delete, like I spent a long time like narrating. So here's how I created these chords and everything. And then like 10 minutes later, I like delete those chords. So it's like, oh, it's gonna be so hard to edit, but I should probably try doing that anyway. But
I think it's a worthwhile venture. I think there'll be a lot of value in that for viewers for sure.
So I guess to kind of wrap up this idea. So it's kind of like, so you have, once you get your 8-bar loop, you're kind of thinking, so what am I going to switch to next? So you're thinking of basically chords next, like for the next section, it would be, how do I change up the chords or change up the key?
So, you know, I'll just go through things like, and really cliched stuff. Like if I'm writing in, if I'm writing in C major, say, like we'll use C major because everyone loves to start there, all with white keys. If I'm writing in C major, then maybe the first thing I'll go to for that next part is I might do the whole relative minor thing and start mucking around in A minor and just, I mean, obviously the same chords, but, you know, just that tonal shift. And if I'm not finding something there, then I'll just start going through circle of fifths. I'll find that first chord that sounds right to where I think this song should be going. And like, it's not to suggest for a second that I nailed this. Like it's sometimes you get lucky and the first thing you try, you're like, oh man, that sounds great. I'm going to run with this now. And sometimes it's just going through all of the available chords until I get the sound and then creating that new progression. And quite often I'll cycle back to something that I threw out that the first time I heard it, I went, that's crap. Like, and then I come back, I'm like, oh, actually, that sounds pretty good. I'm not sure what I was hearing there. So, yeah, I think that little bit of music theory is worth delving into for everybody. And it doesn't have to be a lot. You know, like you could spend, you know, an hour going through a couple of things, get, you know, Dummy's Guide to Music Theory, whatever it is. Just that little bit will help people to kind of find that next part and even building the melody. I think, you know, like, again, you don't have to read music. I cannot read music, but I know enough, I think. Maybe. I'm sure I could do it more. Yeah,
that sounds pretty similar to what I do. Yeah, kind of just building out those chords first, and so you get one right each section, and you can even write some songs, even especially in synthwave, you can have like the same chords throughout the whole song. All right,
yeah, absolutely.
It could be good. It could be stale, but also it could work really well. But yeah, I found that's the best way to kind of get out of that 8-bar loop is start with the chords, because that's kind of the foundation that you can start hearing melodies and counter melodies and harmonies and everything. You can build off of that.
Some of the biggest songs in the genre is the same chord progression for the whole song. It just doesn't sound that way because they've been so creative in how they're shifting tension and shifting different components in and out, keeping that movement, that critical movement, I guess, so the song feels like it's going somewhere. But yeah, like there are some very, very highly streamed synthwave songs that are one chord progression all the way through. There's nothing wrong with it. You Kept Me Running is the same chords all the way through. Not that I'm saying that's a hit, but yeah, like the song's Done Okay, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we can.
I'm trying not to do that all the time. I'm trying to change how I approach things.
Yeah, it's kind of a good idea to have a kind of a different approach so that you don't get kind of in a rut. But speaking of You Kept Me Running, we could go ahead and talk about that.
Sure.
When did you release that song? Because it already has over 14,500 streams on Spotify.
Yeah, so that was January. Oh my goodness, I can't remember the date. It was early January, I think, maybe this.
Right. So within 2 months. So within 2 months, you got over 14,000 streams, and right, you didn't have a huge.
I'll never see that again, I don't think. No. So there's a couple components there, and like, I mean, these answers might please some viewers. These answers might upset a few viewers. I don't know how helpful it's going to be, but like we briefly chatted about this on Instagram. Probably the biggest thing was timing for me. Like I had annual leave from work booked for a couple of weeks, so I timed that release. Like I picked that release so that it was the first day of my annual leave, and my partner was working, so I was at home by myself. And what are you going to do other than promote music if you're sitting around the house? So I probably spent 5 to 6 hours a day for 2 weeks just pushing that song hard. And I did everything that you can think of. I watched every YouTube video on music promotion I could find. And I did some paid stuff, like in terms of like Submit Hub and one of the other playlist submission. I can't remember for the life of me what it is. There's so many.
Playlist
I think it's
Push.
Maybe? Playlist Push. Yeah, that was one. So, and it was mixed success. However, this is probably where that song did its best, and this is where it's not going to be necessarily helpful if we're looking at this through a synthwave viewfinder, but its success was outside of synthwave. Most of the synthwave playlist curators knocked that song back for various reasons, and we can discuss those reasons. But I got on some pop playlists, I got on some indie pop playlists, I got on some chill playlists, and that's where a lot of those streams came from. Somewhere along the way, that song got picked up by that Waiver playlist, which I didn't know existed, and I got a heap of streams off that. Then I sent my next song to them, and they hated it. But so most of that song's success was outside of synthwave, I have to say. And I think that song, like anyone that's listened to it would probably go, yeah, you could probably push that song into a few different genres.
I don't think
that's another discussion.
I would say that's encouraging for me.
Yeah, sure.
Because I mean, it shows that, right? I feel like synthwave, like, it's so great because it is very niche. You have those diehard dedicated fans who are going to buy like even like tape cassettes of your music if you have them available for sale.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also has broad appeal. So I feel like it's very unique, because something that I teach for marketing purposes, because that's kind of my background is digital marketing, is it's better to niche down with your music genre, because it's easier to stand out. You're going to find those diehard fans, and you don't need to be popular to make a decent living. You just need those 1,000 true fans.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, if your song does have broad appeal, even better. So I feel like that's actually really encouraging that your synthwave song was also appealing to these other playlists. And so you don't have to completely limit yourself to just promoting to synthwave playlists or outlets. You can also reach out to, right, what other elements does your song maybe tap into? Is it the chill, like you mentioned, or pop? So I think that's actually really encouraging. And so you said it was mostly those playlist submission tools that really helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and also, I made it to some good genre playlists as well. And that was through Twitter, which we haven't really discussed yet, but we certainly had that quick chat on Insta. Like I've made my biggest connections within the genre on Twitter. So anyone watching that's into synthwave that's not on Twitter, get on there. Like, I think that's the most active social media platform for interaction, at least with genre artists and even fans. They're all there, but a lot of the playlist curators are on there. So certainly that needs to be factored into anyone promoting their songs, trying to get the broadest approach. And a lot of those curators are very easy to approach. They'll post that they're updating their playlist and ask for submissions, and you can submit right there in the comments. And I certainly had some pretty good success with You Kept Me Running that way. A little bit less on Our Long Lost Summer, but I'll be fair to say it's probably not as strong a song, but they can't all be smash hits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
not that You Kept Me Running, that's Australian humor.
That's why I think that's why I like the embracing the sometimes just putting out quantity, right? Quantity.
Yeah.
As I think Napoleon Bonaparte said, it has a quality all its own. So
you're only going to get better the more you put out, right? Like,
I mean, Africa,
it's that mastery thing.
The song Africa by Toto, that they almost didn't put that on their album. They didn't like it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was their most popular song. So
you never know. The story goes with quite a few massive hits, right?
Yeah, Don't Stop Believing too. I think that was kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, I think that promotion thing, I think it's just about putting yourself out there as much as you can. And obviously, we'll have different time available to us. I'm certainly not going to have a lot of time going forward. I'm doing work-related study, which is just starting to fire up again now. And so You Kept Me Running was just that opportunity. I grabbed it. I went everywhere. I was a spam machine,
Right. That's, you probably learned a ton from that. And so obviously people aren't going to be able to do that 6 hours a day for 2 straight weeks, but there's kind of this kind of law of nature, the 80-20 principle. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
Yeah, yep.
Basically for those who don't know, it's like basically when it comes down to anything, this kind of law of nature shows itself. So it's like 80% of your results are going to come from like 20% of your efforts, right? So it just kind of shows itself all through life in all kinds of places. So so probably you found that of all the work you did, there was probably like 20% of your efforts produced 80% of your results. And
Absolutely.
So what would you say that 20% was? Was it the playlist tools? Was it reaching out to playlisters on Twitter? What would you say were, if someone could only had a smaller amount of time, what should they focus on?
For me, I think the playlist tools work the best for that particular song. And I think with that, like my best approach was going for kind of vibe related playlists as opposed to strict genre playlist as well. Like that was certainly where I got the most meat and potatoes for that song, like making onto like chilled playlists and summer vibe playlists and all these types of things that I'd never even heard of and had so many followers. Like, who are these people? I don't know. I don't put on a summer vibes playlist, but people consume music in so many different ways. And I think it's important for us to maybe factor those in and start to use those as part of the marketing strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly will going forward is think about it outside of genre.
For sure. That's something that's really overlooked. That's something I talk about in my Spotify course actually, is to, before reaching out to anyone, like list as many like key terms that characterize your song. And part of that is, like what moods or vibes would it fit under? Also like seasons, like in someone's life or time of the year, like summer, all that different stuff. You can kind of build out these like list of keywords that all these different playlists on Spotify are going to have playlists on that you might not think of, because usually you just kind of think of genres, but there's all these different playlists for all kinds of stuff. And so really diving deep on what are all the different characteristics of your song can really help you find more opportunity, I think.
That's a great tip. That's an excellent tip.
Yeah, and Synthwave, I would say, I mean, summer is definitely strong with Synthwave. Most Synthwave songs fit in the summer.
Yeah, that word summer is used almost as much as the word neon.
Summer, neon, those are some definitely some buzzwords there.
Someone out there needs to call themselves Neon Summer if they haven't already.
Yeah, there probably is.
So smash it.
Yeah. So I guess just what's your if you could just summarize, someone who's a brand new Synthwave artist, they're starting to put out music, what are maybe just like 1 to 3 things you say they should focus on if they want to start growing their Spotify streams?
Just put yourself out there as much as you can, I think. And I feel like maybe it ties back to what we were talking about earlier, just in terms of don't fear the feedback, just put it out there. And at some point you're going to catch a bit of momentum, and a little bit more momentum is going to get you some more. So get on social media, like contact playlist curators. And one of the other big things is interact with other artists. Like that's been huge for me. Like share other artists' music. They see you putting back, they're more likely to share your music as well, and their followers are going to be exposed to that. Create a playlist on Spotify, chuck your music in there, but chuck other people's music in there, post about that. It's another tool that's worked really well for me as well. I kind of had my little fanboy buzz the other week when Nina shared my playlist.
Oh wow.
So like this stuff happens if you put yourself out there. Like just get out there. Like
great tip.
If you don't take the risk, you're not going to get it. You got to risk it to get the biscuit, as we say down here.
So what would you say stops people from doing it? Just overthinking, perfectionism, just fear of the unknown?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of perfectionism, and none of us like critical feedback. Like that's human nature. Like we all have egos, and we all have feelings. So like no one enjoys negative feedback, but you just got to take it. Again, music is subjective. Like just don't absorb that negative feedback. Just try and extract a lesson learned, apply it to the next thing, keep going. At some point you're going to forget about that feedback. Some of the feedback I got through Submit Hub and Playlist Push was just like kind of hilarious, really. Like,
yeah, I've experienced some of that.
Yeah. It takes too long for the vocals to come in. It's like, really? Have you listened to some of the Midnight songs? My God, they got 25 million streams and takes a minute and a half for the vocals to come in. Like, yeah, people will just find anything to try and, kind of whittle the numbers down. Like any reason they can find to push your song aside so they don't have to process as much. It's not nasty intent. It's just how we process data. There's so many songs coming in, they'll find any reason to push it aside. So don't take it too personally. Just keep putting your music out there.
That's a good point, because I've heard from some people that are on there that are like, that have playlists that are reviewing, and like for them, they want to keep their acceptance rate down because that makes them more attractive. It increases their perceived value. So yeah, they want to keep their acceptance rate low. So they might, like you said, just come up with a reason to reject you.
Absolutely. And they've got to keep those bigger artists on their playlist so that people are still listening to them, right? And so if they're only putting on smaller artists, that's going to have that negative impact on their listeners to a certain extent as well. It makes sense. Right? Yeah.
So just keep going. Don't let any criticism get you down. Keep being consistent and just keep.
Boring answer, I know, but I think the truth is often the boring answer, right?
Right. It might be the boring answer that most people know, but how many people actually implement that, right? That's the key is. And so maybe hearing it one more time will help some people to just, I think it's encouraging for me just hearing this to know just, hey, just keep going. Keep going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We've all got a lot more work to do, so we may as well just hunker down and do it. Right.
So awesome. When it comes to music production, though, we all love our gear and plugins, even if our wallets might not so much in bank accounts. But what are some of your favorite tools or plugins for creating synthwave music?
So I've gone through phases, but I think I think Diva would probably be my number one. I use Diva more than anything else. Like my tracks aren't stacked necessarily with Diva, but I almost always start with Diva as my main chord synth. I think it just has that beautiful, rich analog sound. Like, I'm not saying anything people haven't said a million times, but
I need to get Diva, man.
So warm.
Yeah, I know. So many people say Diva.
I got very lucky. I caught it on it was like a $80 sale or something, like $80 Australian, which it's probably
maybe I can get
$5 US, right?
Maybe I can get Yui to give it to me for free for a review.
There you go.
That's how I get my plugins these days. So hey,
do it.
If you want to get free plugins, start a YouTube channel reviewing gear.
Yeah. Diva's definitely the backbone. I can't imagine that changing anytime soon, but I've been dabbling in Serum a bit as well now, particularly for some of my brighter sounds. I think Serum has like a real crystal clarity to it, like a real sharpness, which allows me to offset that Diva kind of warmth and almost fuzziness, I guess, particularly with the tones and presets that I tend to use. I'm a bit of a preset guy. I'm not great on my synthesis knowledge, and to be honest, I don't want to spend what little time I have for music production learning that stuff. Not right now. So I get preset and I'll adjust the presets to get the sound that I hear in my head. But for me, that's probably where all of my music production is going to be centered. Okay. I can't imagine that changing too much.
I'm all about presets, man, because I mean, if you think about it, right, back in the day before you had synthesizers, you had just acoustic instruments, right? Everyone had a guitar or a piano or some drums, and you can do some things to change the tone, but otherwise it still sounds like a guitar, right? People aren't going to be like, oh, you're using the guitar again. Everyone's using the guitar. So, but when it comes to like synths and using presets, like we get really snobbish for some reason in the music industry, thinking like, oh, I can't use presets. But I mean, people designing the presets are experts who have spent a long time learning sound design. So if your time is limited, you want to spend time learning sound design so you can feel good about yourself or feel I don't know, elite or something because you've made your own sounds, or do you want to spend more time learning arrangement, right? Songwriting, the stuff that really matters, choosing the right sounds, right? You can have the coolest sound in the world, but does it fit with the rest of the song and everything? And I've seen tutorials by the Midnight. They use presets. They might, it's good to know how to tweak them, right? Because you might want to change the filter a little bit or something.
Absolutely.
But starting from scratch, I mean, that's fine, right? If you want to do that, go ahead. but you definitely don't have to. And I think that's a good point to make.
So time consuming, right? But again, everyone's into different things. But for me, like, artistically, I'm chasing for what is, to me at least, a very specific, sentimental, nostalgic sound. And so many people have created amazing presets that capture that with just a little bit of tweaking here and there, just to make it suit the track that I'm doing. Like, it just cuts out so much work for me. And as you say, I can focus on the song, which to me is the most important thing. I'm not a knob twiddler. Like, I have a very short attention span. I don't want to sit there for 3 hours like doing this, but I can see that there's fun for a lot of people. It's just, it's not me. So yeah, if there's anyone out there that's judging themselves negatively for playing with presets only, then please, like, keep going. Like, yeah, as you say, the Midnight guys do it, and they've released a bunch of their presets as well. And yeah, I'll be lying if I said I hadn't used. Oh yeah. So Diva, another reason to get Diva. Yeah, they've got a sound bank that Tim put together. So I'd be lying if I said I hadn't used the Comeback Kid preset on every track I've released so far.
Why not?
There's a secret for the kids. It's a great preset.
It's not broke. Don't fix it. Don't reinvent
man, it sounds great.
Yeah, hard to. And
then on the mixing side of it, I pretty much use Slate Digital mostly for most of my stuff. I think there's just a lot of versatility there, and they provide so much great education on their website for using their stuff. Like, it's a no-brainer for me. I pay $10 a month. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's really good. I know their stuff's really good. So good. All that
and really simple. When I'm a simple guy.
Hey, simplicity. That's the theme here. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Then that frees you up, right, to stay focused and go deep in one direction.
Whereas great point. Absolutely.
You're spreading yourself too thin. You're not really going to make any progress. So
yeah,
all about simplicity.
Yeah, you get stuck in that loop again. It's just maybe a different loop. Yeah. Who wants to be listening to the same track for 6 weeks just trying to get the mix right? Like, that is not me. I start hating the song after 2 days.
Yeah, you lose your objectivity, you get listening fatigue, and you just end up making it worse. Honestly, it's better to work quickly. Right? It's kind of counterintuitive, right? You think if you spend a month or a year, right, mixing the song over and over, it's going to be perfect, but it's probably going to be worse than if you just kind of move through it one step at a time systematically, and you get it sounding good, right? Don't worry about being perfect, and you move on, right? There's all those memes out there about someone like their child's on fire, but they gotta fix their snare EQ. So it's like, that child can be a metaphor for your music career if you want to think of it that way. If you're gonna spend all day tweaking your snare EQ,
if it sounds good, accept it, move on. Like, I think we've all kind of gotten a mix to a certain point. We're going, I'm just going to tweak it that little bit more, and suddenly it sounds so much worse, and you can't get it back to where it was like 2 tweaks ago. Yeah, just don't do it. I've certainly learned to just, if it's sounding like something that I'm pretty happy with, then I just move on to the next thing. I'm not going to keep tweaking, because then the next track you move on to EQ or what have you is going to change the way that previous track is interacting anyway. So don't get bogged down, I think.
Yeah, just go 1% better each time and move on. So great advice. So with that in mind, what would you say is like the future of the synthwave genre, right? We talked about that article earlier, saying that it's dead, but yet you see all these pop artists now using it, like the Weeknd and even like Miley Cyrus and others. So where do you see
Dua Lipa, Taylor?
So where do you see it moving in the
oh my God, I wish I knew, because I'd probably end up being way more successful. But it's an interesting meme. I think maybe the origin of that meme of synthwave being dead is kind of what synthwave was, may very well be dead. But I think we always lament that period when something was just ours and it was a secret, and now other people have got a hold of it. There's that, I don't know, elitism is not the right word. I'm not really sure what it is, but that was probably the birth of that meme, I would imagine. But I mean, it's not going anywhere, is it? I think more and more people are finding the genre all the time. And you see that through social media. You see so many new people coming onto socials, like interacting with myself and with other artists as well, and there seems to be new artists all the time
Mm-hmm.
popping up. So there's certainly still growth there. I think that blurring of genre boundaries is something that will just continue. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even know what synthwave is, to be honest. I'm not being facetious. Like, I've just sometimes I'll send people like an advanced listen to one of my tracks. I'm like, is this synthwave? Like, what is this? I don't even know what I
Mm-hmm.
qualify as. I typically use the term retrowave a little bit more, and I don't know how that started. I don't even know where one subgenre starts or finishes, but I imagine that is going to become a bigger thing. Is that it'll be more of an umbrella thing if it's not
Mm-hmm.
already. But look, I think it's going to continue growing. I'm not sure how much of that pop influence is going to play into the genre itself, because I kind of alluded to it before. Like, how many Weekend fans would know that there's a synthwave basis behind not all of his music, but a lot of his music nowadays? And even I would argue Dua Lipa has a lot of a synth pop retro wave,
Mm-hmm.
certainly 80s background, love her stuff. But like, how many of the artists would know that to then go and
Mm-hmm.
look up synthwave artists or what have you? Like, I'm just not sure they're necessarily going to have a flow-on or positive effect on our fan base, but it'll continue to be one of the smaller genres, I guess. But I think there's still a lot of growth to be had.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting into everything: aesthetics. You're seeing fashion, you're seeing a heap of kids walking down the street wearing like 80s looking logos on their t-shirts, 80s shoes, like sneakers are back, all of that kind
Stranger
of stuff.
Things.
It's everywhere, right? D&D is like, I play D&D, like I'm a full 80s nerd. Like, D&D is the biggest it's ever been. So I think there's a lot of scope for it to keep growing. I think it's positive. I think, we should all look forward to what the future holds for us. But anything more specific than that, I wouldn't hazard a guess, because I'll be wrong.
Yeah, it seems like
someone will watch this video in 2 years and leave a comment on YouTube like, this guy had no idea. Right, you're right.
Yeah,
I've got no idea.
I would agree with you. I don't see it going away. Right, it might evolve. It might be absorbed into other genres, but it seems like it's here to stay. It seems like it's become part of the zeitgeist, part of the kind of collective consciousness of our society at this point. And right, people might not be 100% synthwave or retrowave or all into the aesthetic, but it's like it's flavoring everything, and it seems like that's going to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good thing, right? Like, why be stuck with genres? Genres were pretty much designed just so they could do Billboard charts and put records in categories in record stores. I mean, they're not all defining, and there aren't many artists out there that would actually say, I am this kind of artist. Like, I can't think of too many. That blues might be one of the blues and jazz would probably be two genres that jump out there, but certainly in the more popular styles, I don't think anyone ties themselves to a title, do they? Nor should they.
Yeah. And plus, I think like synthwave has like timeless concepts tied to it that we just connect to as human beings, like nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't alive in the 80s, right? You said you're 50. I'm almost 30, but I didn't live in the 80s, but still synthwave gives me a nostalgic feel. And it does that for a lot of people, even if they weren't born in the 80s. I don't know if it's just the dreaminess of the music or the fact that occasionally you'll see a movie or something from the 80s that has that feel, and it just feels nostalgic. And so that's kind of timeless. I think now like synthwave is almost like synonymous with nostalgia. So if someone wants to create like a nostalgic song, they'll have kind of synthwave elements. They'll have that gated snare or some of those analog synths in there. So I think the future is still very bright for synthwave.
Totally agree. Yeah, very excited.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Where can people listen to Neon Racer and find Neon Racer?
I am everywhere. So whatever you use, I'm there. All major streaming services, YouTube, Bandcamp, it's all there. I usually drop everything on every service at the same time. Occasionally, if there's a song that I'm just kind of releasing softly, like I'm about to drop the instrumental version of You Kept Me Running. That's actually been on Bandcamp for a few weeks, but it's about to hit streaming next Friday. But to be honest, like, it's so strong with vocals, I don't even care if people listen to that song or not. I just put it out there because I've got it. So it may as well be there you know, it might absolutely light someone on fire. I don't know. But yeah, wherever you listen to music, I'm there. Hit me up. Any other producers, just, yeah, if you want to chinwag about the art, like, I'd love it. Obviously, I could talk the leg off a chair, so I need no prompting.
That's awesome. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been great. Really enjoyed our conversation and wish you the best moving forward.
Thanks for having me, and right back at you, and looking forward to making a song with you.
If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. And if you want more help creating synthwave music, then be sure to click the video playing on the screen right now, which is my full in-depth tutorial on creating a synthwave song from start to finish. With that, have a great day and keep creating.